Welcome on board Britain's newest low-cost train service. Running from Stirling in the Scottish Central Belt to the British capital London, I paid just £20 to travel over 6 hours on Lumo's latest alternative to flying. But just what is it like? Is over 6 hours on this train bearable? Is Lumo Eats really worth the hype, and what are the problems with this new service? Join me to find out as the journey continues. We'll be starting this trip from Stirling, the smallest of Scotland's 8 cities located in the Scottish Central Belt, yet one of the country's most important transport hubs, seeing 2.53 million passengers a year. Initially opened in 1848 and reopened in 1913, the Edwardian interior was designed by architect James Miller, and it really highlights this well. It looks absolutely stunning. You may also want to make use of the shops present here, but unlike most low-cost operators seen in mainland Europe, Lumo has an onboard catering offering, which we'll of course be checking out later. On that note, our service this morning is the 0850 to London Euston, Lumo's very first service on the West Coast Main Line. Access to the platforms is provided using automatic ticket barriers, and getting to platform 10, where our train is departing from, involves crossing a footbridge, accessible by both stairs and lifts. Stirling is primarily served by Scotland's national railway, ScotRail. Electric trains have been running to Dunblane, Glasgow and Edinburgh since the station was electrified in 2017, whilst intercity branded HST sets that run between Glasgow, Aberdeen and Inverness also call at this station, amongst other local and regional services. LNER run the once per day Highland Chieftain service from Inverness to London King's Cross via the East Coast Main Line that calls here, but from today they'll face competition on the Stirling to London route for the first time. Lumo initially launched in October 2021 on the East Coast Main Line between London and Edinburgh as Britain's first low-cost rail operator, aiming to provide a more affordable alternative to flights with tickets starting as low as £20. In December 2025, some services were extended to Glasgow, and following parent company FirstGroup's purchase of Grand Union's approved paths, will launch a London Paddington to Carmarthen service in 2027 and launch the Stirling route on May 25th, the day of this recording. And here comes our train fresh from the depot. Owing to power supply issues on the West Coast Main Line, the short time frame to retain their allocated paths, and lack of availability of suitable intercity stock, Lumo have resorted to using 5 125mph capable Class 222 Meridian diesel multiple units. These trains are far from new, having been built by Bombardier Transportation between 2003 and 2004 as an upgraded version of the infamous Voyager trains now used by Cross Country and Grand Central. These sets were previously used by East Midlands Railway on intercity services along the Midland Main Line, but were made available after being replaced by the new Class 810 Aurora units. Alstom then refurbished them at their plant in Widnes, Northern England, which included a full repaint, converting them to standard class only, adding external cameras for Lumo's driver-only operations, and reforming all sets into 6-car formations. Whilst Lumo intends to initially use them as a stopgap until new units are ordered, they are exploring using them for future route expansions, such as the Blackpool. Initially, Lumo's new Stirling to London route will be 1 return service a day, like LNER's, but by 27th of July, this will gradually increase to 4 return services a day, with a 5th starting and terminating at Preston, Lumo's new base on the West Coast Main Line. Fares start at £29.90, which is what I paid for this trip, and I managed to get a further 1/3 discount with my rail card, meaning I paid just £19.90, which is amazing value for 6 hours of travel, at least on paper. It would seem Lumo have also brought out the bagpipes for the send-off of the inaugural ride, celebrating improved links between London and Scotland's Central Belt. With that, it's now time to board. Given these trains are over 20 years old, don't expect any level boarding, but there are ramps present if needed. A bit of a tip as well, use the Nicola button just here for touch-free access between the vestibule and seating areas. Neat. Lumo tickets generally come with a mandatory reservation, but there are 30 unreserved seats per train in carriage C if you find yourself boarding without one. I've been assigned coach B, which is one of the ex-first class carriages. The seats here were replaced by new Pfizer ones laid out in a 2x2 configuration with primarily airline style seats and a pair of table seats. As we'll see later, not all carriages are like this, but for now, let's head to my seat, number 33, where we're greeted to a bit of an unexpected surprise. You would have thought it would have been cleaned. We leave Stirling on time at 8:50 with plenty of fanfare, seen off by the bagpipes and drums as we make our way down to London. We'll make 5 stops in Scotland before crossing the Anglo-Scottish border, making our way through the northwest and West Midlands of England, along almost the entire length of the West Coast Main Line to reach London at 3 PM this afternoon, giving us a journey time of 6 hours and 10 minutes to cover a distance of 418 miles or 673 kilometres. Another thing I should probably mention as we leave is Lumo's luggage policies. Spaces are available overhead, however this is generally pretty bad on the Meridians as with the Voyagers in general, though there are plenty of larger spaces throughout the train, so it's already an improvement to the 803s used on Lumo's East Coast route. However, Lumo is a no-frills, low-cost operator, meaning there are restrictions on luggage when travelling with them, though to be honest I don't think I've actually seen these penalties ever enforced. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you have or know of such instances. Anyway, the first part of our journey sees us cross the Scottish Central Belt as we head towards the Anglo-Scottish border just before Carlisle, and just a mere 10 minutes later we arrive into our first stop of Luggage. This is quite a significant day for the town, as well as our next 2 stops of Greenfolds and Whifflet respectively, all of whom have never had a direct service to London until the launch of Lumo's newest service. That being said, our train did experience a 10-minute delay owing to signal issues in Cumbernauld, but there should be enough padding in the timetable for us to make this up. Anyway, let's now move on to look at the interior. I'd personally argue that the seats are much comfier here than the old ones, the ergonomics are pretty decent and the padding is a slight improvement. On the aisle sides are foldable armrests, though the window side ones are fixed. Arguably the largest improvement over the legacy standard class seats, however, is the increased legroom, which is quite noticeable over the older ones as we'll see later. There are also 2 power sockets per seat duo pair, which also includes both USB-A and C sockets, so there's added flexibility for charging devices. Each seat also has a reasonably sized tray table, a grab handle at the aisle for aiding those with reduced mobility, as well as a coat hook for hanging any jackets or coats, though the condition of the windows themselves leaves very little to be desired. Normally low-cost carriers such as Lumo wouldn't expect to have mid to high levels of comfort, but the seats in the ex-first class carriages provide that well. As for the legacy carriages, well, we'll check those out a bit later in the video. We're now joining the West Coast Main Line out of Glasgow and call at Motherwell soon after. Here the train got quite busy, which isn't a surprise. Avanti West Coast, Lumo's main competitor on its West Coast route, is the only daytime operator to serve the station, and Lumo's launch now provides a cheaper alternative to London, even if it is slower, but we'll find out the reason for this a bit later. For now though, we can enjoy the amazing Scottish countryside views as we head straight towards the border. I'm not sure if this was the case for Scotland, but England recorded its hottest May Day in history on the day of Lumo's inaugural trip, so the aircon on our Meridian unit was very much welcome. Not to mention the amazingly clear sky. The last stop for Lumo's West Coast route in Scotland is Lockerbie, located very close to the Anglo-Scottish border. This is one of 2 stations in Scotland that are managed by ScotRail but don't have their trains serving it. Another example being Euston on the East Coast Main Line. The station's primary operator is Transpennine Express, who provide roughly hourly services on its northwest to Scotland route, with Avanti providing limited morning and evening services on the London to Scotland route. After Lockerbie, my sights were set on Google Maps as we closed in on the Anglo-Scottish border, which we crossed after passing through Gretna Junction, and with that, we made it into England, where we stayed for the rest of the journey. Don't forget to adjust your watch. Oh wait, never mind. Not long after crossing the border, we arrive into Carlisle, our first calling point in England. This Grade 2 listed station is named after the Carlisle Citadel, two Grade 1 listed towers commissioned by King Henry VIII during the 16th century as a fortress, but now awaits conversion into a campus for the University of Cumbria. I pointed this out with the cross-country Voyager refurbishment, but if you're expecting Lumo to have fixed the poor internet issues on the Meridians, don't. Sadly, the mobile data signal is still pretty bad, meaning I couldn't get my speedometer to work to see the 110 mph speed limit on the northern section of the West Coast Main Line, but I did at least find the Wi-Fi to work slightly better. Another plus point is there's no email registration required, unlike other UK rail operators, and the online portal has a wide selection, including the Lumo Eats menu for Lumo's onboard catering option. The weird thing with this, however, is that Lumo hasn't removed the cafe bar kiosk in Coach D in the refurbishment, yet it was locked out of use, much like it was when the trains were used on EMR intercity services. Lumo instead provides an at-seat trolley service, which, whilst not as stocked by the time it reached my carriage, still had a lot on offer, though no sandwiches the whole day today due to supply issues, I believe. Still, I got myself some chocolate biscuits, shortbread and an iron brew, because it ain't a trip from Scotland without these, am I right? Oh, and did you know Lumo also has its own brand of water, though they really need to update it for the West Coast route. The full menu is linked in the description, but for now, cheers! This section of the West Coast Main Line between Carlisle and Preston is undoubtedly one of the scenic highlights of taking this train. As we pass Penrith and continue south, don't miss the stunning Logill Viaduct dating back to the 19th century, which can be seen just north of Oxenholme. We then pass non-stop through Lancaster. Lumo is an open access operator, meaning it runs on the available line path slots not used by the legacy franchised operators, and its Stirling service must not be primarily abstracted from Avanti, which comes at the cost of being restricted with the stations it serves to avoid direct competition. As such, we run non-stop between Carlisle and Preston, our next calling point, where we arrive with a 3-minute delay. Preston is Lumo's main base on the West Coast Main Line, which opened in March 2026 ahead of its West Coast route launch just over 2 months later. The wait here is usually 12 minutes for a crew change, and after everybody boarded, I headed out for a few minutes to stretch my legs, admire the stunning train shed, and snap some photos. We actually had an extended wait here owing to a slightly late running Avanti service. Because Lumo is an open access operator, priority is given to Avanti services, and as such, we need to wait for this Pendolino to leave before we can continue. We end up leaving 5 minutes late, which gives us the chance to do a walkthrough. In the vestibules, we can see that the leather foldable seats haven't changed since the units were with EMR, with these being the usual grey maquette on the legacy standard class seats. On our set, Coach B is the only intermediate carriage with the new style seating, but the remaining ones and the Coach A driving vehicle retain their original seating. This is again in a 2x2 configuration, albeit with an increased number of table seats, so are more ideal for groups and families. I'd personally argue that the carriages with the new seating layout are much better. The legroom is much tighter, there's only one power socket per duo seat, a smaller tray table, and the seat comfort isn't as good. I'm not a fan of this inconsistency, to be honest. Coach G in the rear driving vehicle also contains the new FISA lean seating, as well as a wheelchair accessible space for those with reduced mobility. There's also a second one in the lead driving vehicle, with both containing accessible toilets as well. These also haven't changed from the EMR days, and that includes the graffiti on the mirror. The standard toilets, on the other hand, have seen a few of them change slightly, like the one in Coach C here, but I can't say it was clean, and I definitely can't say it smelt good either. After passing Crewe Heritage Centre and the preserved APT and HST power car on display, we arrive into Crewe Station itself. Crewe is often referred to as the centre of the railway universe by enthusiasts owing to the large amount of traffic it sees, making it an important hub on the West Coast Main Line. After leaving, keep an eye on the right for the preserved Locomotive Services Limited stock at Crewe Train Maintenance Depot, including the unique Class 89, which will hopefully be making a return to the main line soon. Our train now speeds towards Stafford and then joins the Trent Valley Line corridor of the West Coast Main Line. This part of the line highlights the curvy nature of the main line, which has a lot of corners and bends. Consequently, non-tilting trains like our Class 222 are mostly restricted to 110 miles per hour, though since the December 2025 timetable change, the non-tilting Evero units used by Avanti are able to reach 125 mph speeds on some limited sections, with the Pendolinos able to maintain this consistently owing to its tilting technology. Lumo has also applied to operate its Meridians at the top line speed, but I'm not actually sure whether it's been granted yet. We're currently on the slow line, so we're definitely not doing that now.
Oh, this works actually here.
Despite this, we pulled into our next stop of Nuneaton a whole 6 minutes early, which allowed me to once again hop off, survive the extreme heat, and snap some photos. Normally we'd be speeding through Rugby at the end of the Trent Valley line, but we instead stopped unexpectedly at the station due to congestion. One thing I have to give praise to Lumo for is the amazing communication and customer service of their staff. It really gave great reassurance over the journey. Just before arriving into Milton Keynes Central, I noticed that the display screens were showing the stop after the actual calling point, like so, which did cause some confusion.
We'll shortly be arriving at Milton Keynes Central.
And at this point we were running with an 11-minute delay. Milton Keynes is the largest settlement in Buckinghamshire and was one of the last to receive city status by Queen Elizabeth II in August 2022. We're now on the final stretch to London, which means it's time to reflect. So it's definitely not a perfect service. Mind you, some of the factors were outside of Lumo's control, such as having to run diesel trains under the wires for over 400 miles and the less than ideal paths, but the refurbishment of the 222s could definitely have been conducted better, and the unit should have been better prepared for the inaugural journey. One thing I should also mention is that most passengers seem to have been dumped in my carriage, whilst the rest of the train had lighter loadings by comparison, but at the end of the day I can't really be complaining much considering I only paid £20, and the onboard service provided by the staff was top notch. This new service is still a welcome addition to the British railway network and brings much needed competition to the West Coast Main Line for the first time, and I wish Lumo the best with their latest expansion as it matures over time. We're now passing Wembley Intercity Depot with Wembley Stadium in the background, and after passing Camden Sidings and the ongoing HS2 works, we finally reached journey's end at London Euston with a delay of 9 minutes. Now you've heard from me, I want to hear from you. What did you think of Lumo's new Stirling to London service? Have you tried Lumo before, or has this video inspired you to give them a go? Let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, hype and share it if you did to aid the channel's growth, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more content such as this weekly. Now I'm off to go and edit this video and hopefully get out of this extreme heat too, because the tube's clearly the best place to do that, right? Thanks so much for coming with me on this trip, and I look forward to bringing you with me on my next one.